In Luke chapter 10, verses 25 through 37, Jesus was challenged with the question, "Who is my neighbor?" As was typical of Jesus, he responded to this question with a parable, which is commonly referred to as the parable of the Good Samaritan. Let me paraphrase essentially what Jesus said. There was a man who was traveling the road from Jerusalem to Jericho. He was on a dangerous road, and unfortunately he was attacked by robbers and left for dead. Well, along came a priest, but instead of helping this poor man, he chose to cross to the other side. He had places to go and good things to do, so he just could not get involved. Soon, another guy comes along. This time, he's a Levite. But alas, just like the priest, and probably for the same reasons, he went to the other side of the road too. But then a Samaritan man comes along. He is moved with compassion and he helps the injured man. He bandages his wounds, puts the injured man on his donkey, and took him to an inn to care for him. And when the Samaritan had to leave, he gave the innkeeper money to cover the cost of the wounded man's care and even promised to reimburse the innkeeper for any additional expenses. Now, it's pretty easy to see how relevant this parable is to what we are called to do as life disciples for those at risk for abortion. Often these women and men are vulnerable. In a sense, they have physical, emotional, social, and spiritual wounds that have left them broken and bruised on the highways of life. So much so that they believe that aborting their unborn child is the best and only option. But we are called to be their neighbors in the name of Jesus Christ and to bind their wounds with the life support that we are uniquely equipped to provide. However, if we're really honest, this call is a bit scary, and we can understand where the priest and the Levite were coming from. Helping others can be a messy business, especially if we don't set boundaries. Think about it this way. Let's say that you are called to help someone, and let's say that it's dark, and to get to this person in need, you have to drive up a very steep and winding mountain road that takes your car right to the edge. Moreover, the road has no guardrails. Well, if you're like me, you'd be pretty hesitant to go up this road, no matter how great the need, right? But now let's say that the road had guardrails. Now that's a different story, isn't it? You would be careful, but you would be confident. Why? Because guardrails are boundaries. And this brings to mind an insight that God gave me about the parable of the Good Samaritan. Yes, the story is about caring for the needs of others, but it's also a story about setting the proper boundaries. And Jesus is simply challenging the hearers of the parable and us today to set the right boundaries. You see, the priest and the Levite set boundaries that were so far away from the need that they could not meet the need and get involved. But here's the thing, the Good Samaritan set boundaries too. For example, he bandaged the wounds that needed to be treated at that time. And he focused on the man's needs, not on the man's wants. That's a boundary. Also, when the Good Samaritan left the wounded man at the end, he didn't say, give the man whatever he wants. Nope, the Good Samaritan was specific in his instructions to the innkeeper to focus on what was needed to make the broken man whole. Why? Because the Good Samaritan was not trying to create dependency, which often can give a wounded person a sense of entitlement over time. He was seeking to give the wounded man back his God-designed independence. Why? Because this would fill the wounded man with gratitude, and then this healed man would be transformed from one who is served to one who is serving others. Indeed, that's what setting good and godly boundaries will do. So as we embrace the call and develop the skills to be life disciples who make disciples for life of those considering abortion, let's remember the example of the Good Samaritan. He was wise as a serpent when he set boundaries, and he was as gentle as a dove when he met the needs of the hurting.